Tens of millions of turkeys have died for the traditional Thanksgiving meal. There was a presidential pardon this week of 2 birds, as always, but there's still time to pardon the animals yourself and go vegan. Still not convinced because you say Ozempic will save you? We give thanks for people like Dr. Neal Barnard, who has good information. There are natural alternatives to Ozempic and Wegovy, vegan ones. We reprise our conversation with Dr. Barnard on the PETA Podcast with Emil Guillermo. Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this inside look at animal rights. Brought to you by PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. The weight loss battle was made more complicated with the growing popularity of drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy. They may work, but at almost $1,500 or so an injection, they aren't cheap. And while you can lose weight, it could also be dangerous to your liver, your pancreas, your gallbladder, among other things. A better approach to diet drugs may be the quality of foods you eat. Dr. Neal Barnard, the president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, and an adjunct faculty member at the George Washington University School of Medicine, has authored a new book, The Power Foods Diet, the breakthrough plan that traps, tames, and burns calories for easy and permanent weight loss. Barnard took a break from a recent American Medical Association meeting, an AMA meeting, to catch up and talk about the new book on the PETA Podcast.
The AMA actually has a number of really quite progressive positions, I'm happy to say, including a number of ones that we have brought. But they say that in hospitals, the whole idea of unhealthy hospital foods got to become a thing of the past, and that plant-based meals have to be there, and that the bacon and eggs have to be thrown out. So they do have some good policies.
Yeah, and because, we've talked before, and you've always said, well, doctors, they don't really get into this. I mean, some do, but most basic trained doctors do not get into eating and nutrition, and as it relates to health. And I was just wondering, is that still the case, or are more and more doctors coming into the fold saying, hey, there's a link there between what people eat and what happens to their health?
There really still is quite a deficit of nutrition and medical education, and it's not enough of a focus of medical practice either. That said, there are a lot of people within the medical community who are foursquare in favor of healthy diets, and I'm talking about specifically vegan diets. And so we're seeing lots more of that. And frankly, that's because times have changed. Many doctors are adopting a vegan diet themselves. They're seeing that for their patients, it can be really particularly good medicine.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a gold mine that you've been mining for decades, really. Everyone has to eat. It becomes a forever topic, and it's kind of this evergreen thing. But the question is sort of philosophical that we come up to, is that why is it so hard for people to eat well, or to know that you can eat enough or eat the right things? Is it just, this is human nature? Is that as simple as that?
I think it was pretty easy to eat healthy things for as long as healthy things were all there were to eat. In other words, it wasn't until people figured out how to make cows stand still that they figured out that to have dairy products and to make fatty cheese. And that didn't exist for most of our time on Earth. And now it does. And so we've got to kind of deal with that. And that's true with so many things that people get hooked with. And you could take alcohol or drugs or chocolate or all of these things. These are things that human beings devised. And so it becomes, healthy eating becomes more difficult when we're dealing with things that really weren't there as part of our longer term history.
So it's not our natural gluttony or anything like that, being wrong way eaters. Things evolve. We get the cows standing up. Dairy is discovered. this is just the way it goes. And then it takes people like you to come up and say, hey, all you have to do is eat rice and beans and some vegetables and some grains.
People do need a certain amount of support for change, because if we've been going down the wrong road for a while, people do need information. For example, they need to know that a plant-based diet, even without specific calorie counting, without worrying about carbs, can actually help people lose weight. But knowing that in your mind is one thing, but helping your behavioral practices to follow suit. So what we typically do here at the Physicians Committee and our research studies, and also at Barnard Medical Center where we see patients, is we do two things. We provide information, but then we have to do more than that. We have to follow up with folks. So people have an issue. Okay, I ate at a restaurant where they didn't understand what I wanted, or I'm at a wedding reception and the foods weren't healthful, so I don't know what to do there. These are always surmountable issues, but these are the challenges of day-to-day life. And once people learn how to deal with those things, pretty soon they get adapted to it. And I have to say, that's why I got so excited about this new book that I just came out, that you know about, The Power Foods Diet, is that we discovered that, frankly, not only are people willing to get over those kinds of resistances, once they get there, they love it. They love how they feel. They love the automatic weight loss, but they also love these foods that maybe they feared before, because let's face it, it's a little bit different to have your French toast without it dripping with butter. But people end up really liking this new way of eating.
Right. So you are leading in expertly into this nice segue into the book, The Power Foods Diet. This is the latest way that you're bringing information to the people. Because you've done other books in the past dealing with specific kinds of things like how to defeat diabetes and other diseases. This idea here, the Power Foods Diet, you say it was inspired by people understanding that once they knew or understood what foods to eat, they were encouraged to continue to eat this way. Is that it?
Yes. We've been doing this kind of study, Emil, as you know, for just so many years, starting in the 1990s. We really started off looking at diabetes, weight problems, changing the way you eat for those things. And we discovered that the more people would eat of certain kinds of foods and the less they would eat of other foods, they would do better. In other words, it wasn't just a question of how much you eat or how big or small your portion is. It's really qualitatively, what are the foods that you're eating? And I have to say, I want to give a lot of credit to Harvard, because Harvard researchers in 2015 did a really cool study. They looked at more than 100,000 people and found that the more they ate of certain specific foods, the more weight they lost. Completely counterintuitive, because you're going to think, wait a minute, if I'm eating more of anything, I mean, healthy, unhealthy, if I'm eating more, I got to gain at least some weight. And that is not what they found. They found that the more people ate of certain foods, the more weight they lost. And it was everyday foods that we know about, but we don't necessarily put into our grocery cart too much, like blueberries and strawberries and raspberries, or cruciferous vegetables or green vegetables, or citrus fruits. Everybody loves a cantaloupe, but how often do you actually buy one? And so they discovered that they made this big long list of foods. And if you ate more of these foods, you would tend to lose more weight. So we jumped into this. Our job has been to really put this to the test. Does this work? Will it be permanent? Will the weight loss be significant, or will it be small? And I'm happy to tell you that it's led to a complete sea change in how we view obesity, which is forever. We are throwing out the food scale. We are throwing out the calorie chart. We are throwing away these dietetic portions, and we are focusing instead on the types of foods that we bring in and put on our plate.
So in other words, you can overeat you can overeat as much as you want of certain foods if they're the good foods, the power foods, I imagine, right?
Yes, in theory, absolutely. The issue is that these power foods prevent overeating in many ways. That's one of the things they do, is they just have natural appetite tamers, so that a person is going to tend to stop eating. They also trap calories so you can't absorb them. And some of them will turn on your calorie burn so that whatever you ate, you burn off. And as an example of the first thing, a person can pick up a bag of little chocolate chip cookies or Oreos or something like that. And you know what? you can eat half that bag. You can eat that whole darn bag. And what stops you is pain. You eat so much, you just can't take anymore. But, and people like a strawberry or a blueberry or an apple, but nobody ever sat down and ate 6 apples. Or for that matter,
I've done that. I've done that, Neal. I've done that.
Really? You're the only person I ever know, but I wouldn't put that past you. But the point is that these foods are naturally modest in calories. They're really high in fiber. And so they turn down the appetite in a natural way. And what really got exciting was when Wegovy came out, the injectable drugs for weight loss. Foods will do what Wegovy does, but they do it naturally. By that, I mean, Wegovy is a synthetic GLP-1 agonist, which is a fancy way of saying it goes to the brain and turns on your appetite. Well, GLP-1 is something your body actually makes if you eat the foods that turn it on. And
wait a minute. Neal, you're saying we have natural Wegovy, or we could have natural Wegovy working for us if we eat the right things?
Exactly. The folks at Novo Nordisk copied GLP-1 and put it in an injectable that you can spend $15,600 a year to buy. But when you eat food, your gut makes GLP-1 automatically. It does it 3 times a day or however often you eat. But the problem with it is not all foods will trigger GLP-1 equally. So a lot of people have no idea, and their GLP-1 is just not working at all. And so they're lining up at the CVS to buy synthetic GLP-1. And the other thing I should say is that Novo Nordisk, it's a synthetic GLP-1 that is really potent, which is why people do tend to lose weight with it, but they also tend to get sick with it. I mean, it causes nausea, vomiting, gallbladder disease, pancreatic problems, all kinds of stuff, because it's a synthetic. So I'm not saying that there's never a reason to use it, but those reasons would be quite rare. And because your body can do this naturally.
Now, you mentioned Wegovy. What about Wegovy's rival, Ozempic? Same kind of thing, Ozempic?
Yeah, Ozempic is actually the same drug. And there are others like Zepbound is another one. So there are 2 companies. Novo Nordisk makes Ozempic and Wegovy, and it's funny that it's the very same drug. They're just marketed a little bit differently, and then Eli Lilly has come in and is a competitor. But my research colleague, Dr. Hanna Kaliova, brought in individuals and gave them, first of all, a meat sandwich. Like you go to McDonald's, not you, not me, but a person might go to McDonald's and get a burger. And then they tracked GLP-1. And what's supposed to happen is after you eat, the food goes down your digestive tract and it triggers your intestinal cells to make GLP-1. That goes in the bloodstream up to your brain, and it goes to certain receptors that turn the appetite down. And this is a good thing because your intestinal tract has to feed back. Your hunger makes you eat. If the food goes down to your digestive tract has to digest it and absorb it. But if it's got too much, you can't handle it. So the digestive tract has a way of telling the brain, I've got a lot of food, stop eating. That's what it's supposed to do. It turns out that fast food burger does not trigger GLP-1. Basically stays flat. She then does the experiment again. Dr. Kaliova did the experiment again. Brought in individuals, gave them a plant-based sandwich. The GLP-1 level went bang, right up. Now, the question is why? Because your body is not looking for just any old kind of food. It's looking for high fiber foods. It's looking for high complex carbohydrate food in order to release the GLP-1. So if you're eating a hamburger patty, it has 0 fiber, 0 complex carbohydrates. And the way that's going to make you stop eating is by pain. When your stomach stretches so much, you can't eat anymore, you stop eating. But your appetite turnoff switch is supposed to activate way before the point of pain by getting GLP-1 naturally.
To do that, you need a
plant-based meal, because that's what's got the complex carbohydrate and the fiber in it.
Yeah. So in other words, what you're saying, eat the right foods, they'll raise the level of GLP-1, and they'll turn off the thing in your head that says you want to eat, and it'll actually tell you to stop eating. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. That's exactly what I'm saying. Now, the problem is, though, that people are eating a lot of foods that don't trigger GLP-1. And so they don't get any appetite turn off. They feel, and people will say this. They say, when I was a kid, I would eat when I was hungry. I'd stop when I was full. I'd go out and play with my friends. Food wasn't the biggest part of my life. But now that I'm older, I'm kind of hooked on these things. And people eat to the point of pain very, very often. They don't, if you're not uncomfortable, you haven't eaten enough, but your body can get back in balance. And so the key here is to use power foods. And the power foods include certain spices, like ginger or cinnamon or peppers, or there's a bunch of them that tend to be metabolism boosters. They include quite a number of vegetables and fruits. And once you know which ones they are, it makes the appetite is controlled naturally.
So when you get these power foods, you can simulate your own natural Wegovy system or natural Ozempic system that says, stop eating, you're fine, and you're eating naturally, you're not hungry, and you lose weight. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. We've seen this in clinical trials that we do, where we measure all of these things. We measure people's metabolism when they come in, because people will very often say, not only is my appetite out of control, but anything I eat, I gain weight with it. It's like I don't have a metabolism anymore. I don't burn calories anymore. I just look at food and I gain weight. And we could test that. And they're not wrong. Their metabolism has slowed down, but we could speed their metabolism up again by bringing in certain foods, and it happens really very, very quickly. So that the average person can be burning a couple hundred calories a day more than they were burning before, simply by choosing the right foods.
But it's true that the older you get, your metabolism isn't quite as high, and so you don't burn off as much as you would have when you were younger. But you're saying there are ways, if you eat the right foods, you can compensate for that loss of metabolism. Is that it? Or does the food that you eat raise the metabolism level?
Both of those things are true. First of all, metabolism, if it falls, let's say a woman's 50 years old, 55 years old, if her metabolism has slowed down, that is not because of age. She is too young for that. What has happened is her cells have accumulated little fat particles from cheese pizza and from French fries and any source of fatty foods. The fat particles get inside her muscle cells and inside her liver cells. And the reason that matters is those are your calorie burners. Your muscles, your muscle mass is what's really burning calories a lot. And your muscle cells accumulate little bits of fat. I'm not talking about belly fat. I'm talking about fat inside your muscle cells. It's kind of strange, but it's built up in there, built up in your liver. And we can detect it with a technique called magnetic resonance spectroscopy. We can measure it. So a person comes in. They don't know it. In fact, they might be a thin person, but there are particles of fat inside their muscles, inside their liver, that they've been accumulating over years. And when there's fat buildup inside their cells, their mitochondria, which are the calorie burners in their cells, they're not working anymore. So their metabolism is slow, but it's not due to time. It's due to cheese pizza. It is due to fried foods. It's due to steak. It's due to any delivery of fat inside their cells. Here's the beauty of it. This happens really fast. You come in, researchers in Baton Rouge or in Louisiana did an amazing study. They used a high-fat diet for 3 days and found that you could slow down metabolism in 72 hours by just feeding fatty foods. So people, little by little, are accumulating fat inside their muscles. We can take it out. So in, say, a 14-week study, we'll keep animal products out. So there's zero animal fat. We'll keep vegetable oils really low, and the fat comes out of the muscle cells, and their metabolism goes right back up. So it's not your age. It has nothing to do with that. It's not a lack of exercise. It has to do with the fat accumulating, and we can pull it right out. And so what that means is your metabolism will go up, but in response to the very same food, you can now burn off more of those calories.
So don't eat meat. Don't or decrease the amount of oil intake, even vegetable oil, and you'll get the fat out of your muscle. But now this means that some weightlifters, people who, do some moderate weightlifting, in their muscles, they have fat if they rely on, say, meat protein, or if they rely on dairy protein or or if they eat a lot of oils. Is that it? And then they can get fat from the fat that's in their muscle?
Athletes will accumulate fat in their muscle cells quite often. Keep in mind, some of these athletes are working so hard. You or I might be burning 2,000 calories a day. They might be burning 4,000 calories a day.
Right.
And then there's the coach syndrome that kicks in. That's when the football player who's been exercising becomes a coach and is not exercising anymore. And suddenly you see what their food is really trying to do to them.
Yeah.
And they're not burning it off that way. But the other beauty of this approach is we're not talking, although I'm saying getting away from meat and dairy products, great idea. The foods are not the kind of food that you might imagine if you're thinking you're not going to enjoy it or love it. When I wrote the Power Foods Diet, I worked with Dustin Harder and Lindsay S. Nixon, who are the world's greatest food developers. And so we made, some of the Power Foods, blueberries happened to be one. That was the top of the Harvard list.
Right.
And so Dustin made blueberry syrup. And cinnamon is another power food. Cinnamon contains a natural aldehyde that boosts the metabolism. So Lindsay made cinnamon French toast. And it's not all glopped up with butter. And so you put these two together, French toast with blueberry syrup on top. I mean, it's America's favorite breakfast, but can it be a slimming breakfast? Absolutely. Or we've got wild blueberry muffins, or I've got a veggie lentil soup, or mango dal, or pasta arrabbiata. You could go to your favorite Italian restaurant and you can have a slimming dinner, and you can finish it off with carrot cake. These are all among the foods, 120, 130 recipes in the Power Foods Diet that are power foods for weight loss.
So it sounds like if you know how to combine the foods. Now, all right, people who've been looking at this field for years, they've heard about combinations, about, getting the right proteins with, carbs and all that. This is different. This is really identifying the power foods, combining the foods together, and you can eat as much as you can, and you'll generate the kind of meal that will turn on the GLP-1, turn off it'll go to your brain and tell you, hey, you've eaten enough, and you'll feel satisfied. I think that's the point, right? You can eat these kind of foods.
Yeah. Some of these it's like your body's just been sort of waiting for you to have cinnamon toast. Cinnamon contains a compound. It's an aldehyde compound. And by the way, when researchers discovered this aldehyde in cinnamon, they didn't know what to call it. So they're not very creative. They named it cinnamaldehyde. But what it does, let's say you have some cinnamon toast.
Yeah.
The cinnamon goes down your digestive tract, and there's a little receptor there in your digestive tract. And, your digestive tract is loaded with receptors trying to detect what you've been eating. And when the cinnamaldehyde goes down, it attaches to a receptor that causes a little squirt of adrenaline into your blood. Now, don't freak out. I don't have to peel you off the ceiling.
Yeah.
But what it does is it increases your metabolism for an hour or two after the meal. So researchers have put this to the test. And in 116 people, they found that putting cinnamon, you could put it in capsules so the person doesn't know what they're having, cinnamon versus a placebo. And the cinnamon group, over about 16 weeks, lost about 7.5 pounds just from the cinnamon alone. And now the amount they use is pretty heroic. It's about a teaspoon per day, which people like cinnamon, they don't usually have that much, but you can use a little bit. And then you add the other power foods. Use blueberries. Blueberries have anthocyanins in them that are a metabolism booster. Researchers in the UK looked at identical twins, and they looked at 2,700 identical twins. And what they found is the twin within each pair who ate the most anthocyanins, of blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, had substantially less body fat and specifically less abdominal fat compared with her genetically identical twin sister. So have some cinnamon, have some blueberries, and just bring the power foods in, let them do the work for you. And you're going to lose weight easily without counting calories, without limiting carbohydrates. You don't even have to lace up your sneakers if you don't want.
Yeah.
Much as I love exercise, the person who does not exercise is still going to get some benefit.
Well, I love to eat. I don't love to exercise, and I've managed to keep my weight down because of things like intermittent fasting, along with eating a no-oil vegan diet. But your book, The Power Foods Diet, concentrates on these foods, and I'm sure I want people to buy the book, of course, But give us the top 10 power foods. What are the power foods that people should have at least some every day to make sure that the receptors are getting the right message and you're not you're not overeating, I guess, is what these power foods do, right?
They do that. And there's one last thing that we haven't really talked about that I should make sure that people know about, because in some ways it's the most graphic one. Certain foods that are high fiber foods are calorie trappers.
Oh, that's right.
By that, I mean the fiber goes down your digestive tract. When you eat a high fiber food and you chew it up, it turns into a million little sponges. And those sponges go down your digestion and they pick up calories that you haven't absorbed yet. And they carry them along your digestive tract and you literally flush them down the toilet. So in 2017, researchers at Tufts did a research study that my research team is never going to do, because what they did is in 90 participants, they collected stool samples from everybody. And they kind of picked through them to find unabsorbed calories. And what happened was they split the 90 people into two groups, and one group got white bread, white rice, where the fiber's been removed. The other group got whole grain bread, brown rice, where the fiber is still there. And what they found is that the whole grain group could trap about 100 calories a day that they would never even absorb. Now, 100 isn't a lot, but you add that to the appetite taming and the metabolism boosting effect, and it's real. So you asked about like top foods. Everybody can pick their own, but of the spices, I would suggest that people do think about cinnamon, do think about ginger as well. And if spice is your thing, go for the capsaicins. Now, if spice isn't your thing, you don't have to have them. But the spicy foods contain something called capsaicinoids. I'm talking about jalapeno peppers. When you consume them, they boost your metabolism for about an hour. And a lot of people felt this. You're at the Mexican restaurant, a few too many jalapenos on your burrito, and you're suddenly sweating. What's happened is thermogenesis has kicked in and you're burning calories. So you can exploit that if you want. Don't go too far. The top foods at Harvard were the whole berry group. That's blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, blackberries, all of them. Number two, the cruciferous vegetables. That's broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale. Number three is the green leafy vegetables in general, like spinach, asparagus. These are all power foods. Number four, the melons, cantaloupe, watermelon. Everybody loves them. Nobody buys them, but they are great. Group number five is citrus fruits. And here was a surprise. Oranges, grapefruit, but also, and a lot of people say, no, I have the whole fruit, don't have the juice. The juice worked.
Wow.
And group number six is the most neglected of all. Everybody knows it. Our grandparents knew about it, but a kid today wouldn't know it if it hit him in the head, and that is a bean. Black beans.
The beans, yeah, the beans.
Black beans, navy beans, pinto beans, all of them. Soybeans, soybean product. The more people consume these foods in a harvest set, the more weight they lost. Now, I want to say a word about the soybeans because some people are nervous about soybeans. They're convinced it will give them cancer or something like that. Soybeans are a cancer preventer. They reduce breast cancer risk by about 30%. They reduce prostate cancer by a similar amount. For women previously diagnosed with cancer, soybeans reduce recurrence. So the whole bean group should be back front and center in our routine.
Eating them individually or in combination, I guess if you eat in the right amounts, you can have that GLP-1 effect, or you can have the calorie trapping effect of the power foods.
Any way you want them is going to work fine. And when you open up the power foods diet, you'll see it's. I mean, I got to tell you, the pictures are so gorgeous. It's about 2 inches away from food porn, I have to say. And that's because Dustin Harder, who is not only the recipe developer, but the photographer, just did such a brilliant job. But there's carrot cake in there. There are brownies. And Emil, I'm not kidding. The brownies have a little bit of black beans in them and a little bit of blueberries in them. And in the oven, they melt into the brownies and they become rich and delicious, but the power foods are built in. So no, they don't have to be in a specific combination. You have whatever you want. Just take the power foods, find the ones you want, bring them into your diet. You could be skeptical. It doesn't matter if you believe in them or not. They work for you automatically. And plus, there are stories of individuals, real people, like Shanae from Kansas City or Steve from Monterey, California. People, or Stephanie, who's from Chicago, who have put this to work and they've lost 100 pounds or more by choosing the right healthy food, the foods that love them back. It is the most life-changing, empowering thing to realize that you've got the power to get into the body you want to be in.
You know, people aren't interested in healthy eating, but they want to lose weight. This is kind of an ideal thing because you don't put restrictions on them, except for the foods. You got to eat the right foods, but you don't give quantity restrictions, or people can eat as much as they want, right?
And yes, and that is such a gift for people, especially somebody who's had diabetes or chronic weight problems, and their doctor is saying, you can only eat 800 calories a day, da, 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 da. And by Wednesday, people are ready to eat the sofa. They just can't do it. So in this case, what we're saying is stop worrying about all that. Stop worrying about the quantity. Stop worrying about limiting carbohydrate. You know, there are people now who are afraid of healthy carbohydrates. They won't eat an apple.
Yeah.
They're afraid of a baked potato.
I know. I was one of them for a while. You know, bread. Well, the wrong bread.
Yeah.
The wrong bread, of course.
Yeah. Well, all these things, you can bring them in and people can lose weight. They can lose weight naturally, and all the side effects are good ones. When I say side effects, yes, you're losing weight, but you're going to have more energy. Your athletic ability is going to improve. You're going to be able to get your cholesterol down. In most cases, diabetes improves. Sometimes it goes away. But Emil, I think sometimes the most exciting thing of all is it's something you could share with people you love. You know, very often you got a couple. One's got a weight issue and a little motivation. The other has health problems too.
Yeah.
But they might be a little reluctant. But if we share my carrot cake, you know, your partner's going to say yes. Yeah. That's a power food. If you make it the right way, share my wild blueberry muffins. That's a power food if they're made the right way. And so everybody can get healthy together. And if you got kids today have a more difficult trajectory than any generation ever on this planet. And what I mean by that is the distractions are out there. The foods are dangling from them at school and at the convenience store, which was not there when you and I were little.
The bad foods are dangling. And they're marketed to them with images, and with they jack up the taste. And so you're really fighting marketing. Food marketing.
Absolutely.
That's not what we had to deal with when we were young.
And the way we're going to win that, it was with a little love and the right kinds of foods. And that's what the power foods are. You know, we've got these wonderful blueberry pops. The 10-year-old kids are all in the neighborhood, and they're going to come by because I've got a recipe. It's a power food called blueberry pops. All it is blueberries, bananas, pears, little almond milk, and lemon juice. That is the whole ingredient list, Emil. You put it in your blender and you go whiz it down, and you then put it in. You go to the part of the grocery store where they sell can openers and mixing bowls. They sell popsicle forms there.
Oh yeah.
And you put it in the popsicle forms with a stick, put it in the freezer, and all the 10 and 12-year-olds are coming to buy your house for these wild purple blueberry pops. And you are so proud because everything you're giving them is good for them.
Yeah.
And so you're helping kids to eat in a healthy way. And it's the most beautiful gift that you can give is healthy, powerful foods that love them.
I so love the fact that you mention blueberries almost every 10 seconds. I'm a big blueberry guy, but I've noticed that a lot, and I'm in California, a lot of the blueberries in California that where I shop tend to be from like Mexico and Peru. When I go back east, all the blueberries are from California. So I think all the California blueberries are being shipped east. Does it matter? And does it matter if it's an organic blueberry or a regular blueberry?
They all work as power foods, whether they're organic or not. But I would favor organic blueberries. And the reason is, let's say I get a banana or I get an orange. If those are sprayed with pesticides, I'm going to peel off that banana peel and throw it away. I'm going to throw away the peel on the orange. So those pesticides are in the trash, but you're not peeling your blueberries. So I would get them organic. They will cost more, but organic is worth it. And overall, you're going to save money. We've tracked food expenditures with people who choose power foods overall, because you are going to spend somewhat more on vegetables and fruits, but you're going to spend less on meat. I mean, you're not buying meat, less on cheese, and the overall expenditures drop by about 16%. So your average person on a power food site saves about $500 a year. So let's say you got a family of 4. You are saving enough to take everybody out on a vacation.
Yeah. And so Now you mentioned beans also. Does it matter canned beans or, some of the, there's some fancy beans, the heirloom beans. Does it matter? Canned beans or, regular beans?
The ones that you like, and they don't have to be the ones you grew up with. I grew up in North Dakota. I never saw a black bean until I went to the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. We didn't really have soybeans very much. Soybeans were cattle feed, but the soybean products that say throughout Asia, that was kind of news to me. So the ones that either you grew up with or ones you've learned to like are all fine. I think it's good to avoid GMO, genetically modified, but the GMO beans are pretty much the soybeans that are for cattle feed, chicken feed, hog feed. If you buy, say, soybeans that are marked organic, by law, they cannot be GMO. So that's fine. Navy beans, the chickpea is the most versatile bean. I mean, you could put it in a salad. You can make it into hummus. You could do any darn thing with chickpeas. You can have them for breakfast. I would say a couple things though. If you buy canned, you will see that some of them have added sodium, some don't, and you can make your choice there. If you open it up and they come out like little rocks, that means the factory was too impatient and they didn't cook them long enough. You want your beans to be soft. So if you're cooking them at home, which is real easy to do, you soak them overnight and then you boil them for an hour, hour and a half, whatever it is, until they're nice and soft.
That's good. All right. Just one more question. Like what I like to eat, and they're these special tortillas they make, and they usually brand them as a keto thing. I'm not on a keto diet, but they have the right amount of fiber that I'm looking for. One tortilla has like 10 to 14 grams of fiber because they include flax. Is there anything wrong with those kind of, the so-called keto tortillas that are out there?
It's probably okay. But one doesn't need to be looking for them. What the keto people are trying to do is they're trying to say, well, your whole big problem in life is carbohydrate. So they make things that don't have much carbohydrate in them. And often, in my view, that's misguided because carbohydrates have only 4 calories in a gram. Fats have 9 calories in a gram. So if you want to avoid something, avoid the cheese, avoid the meat, avoid the greasy foods. And that's why your average person on a vegan diet is 35 pounds slimmer than their omnivorous friend. And that statistic comes from the Adventist Health Study too, where they compared health conscious people. The vegans were about 35 pounds slimmer than everybody else. People following long-term keto diets just don't have anything like that kind of success.
Yeah. Well, like I said, they're branded keto, but I get them mostly for the fiber because I know that if I eat 3 of those, I get 30 grams of fiber, which is a lot of fiber,
There you go.
Which isn't bad. I've been reading your books for years and I'm healthier because of them. I'm looking forward to the Power Foods diet. Thank you for informing me about Wegovy and Ozempic. You can replicate all those things with that Ozempic and Wegovy do by just eating the right power foods.
And luckily, unlike the drugs, all the side effects of following a healthy plant-based diet, all the side effects are good ones. And that's what we want.
Yeah. Hey, Neal, really congratulations on the new book. I asked a philosophical question about, this is the gold mine because, you're fighting the marketing, you're fighting the natural tendency of people to overeat. And I asked you, why don't we get better? And you answered it. You said, well, we need to balance all that with good information. The Power Foods diet is good information. And I hope that people tap into it and get the book.
Well, thank you, Emil. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Neal. And really, thank you for being part of the PETA podcast. I always enjoy talking to you about this stuff because, I stopped looking at scales. I stopped measuring food and that kind of thing. And I just know if I'm not eating oil, if I'm not eating meat, I'm okay. But I still tend to overeat a little bit. We didn't talk about sugar, but I'm sure, how do you deal with sugar, Neal?
Well, if you think about it, there are natural sugars in apples and in cherries and in berries. And, those tend not to create any kind of problem at all. In fact, those are the foods our bodies were designed for, because the natural sugars get into your cells to give you power. The kind of sugar where people run into trouble is a person took some sugar cane and they put it into it. If you just took the sugar cane itself and you chewed on that, you'd stop after a while. But what they'll do is they put it into a factory.
Oh, right.
And they take all the fiber out and all the pulp out, and they take the concentrated sugar and they'll put that into a soda or into candy. Or where I grew up, it was it was sugar beets. And the sugar beets came out of the ground and you could smell them at night. They're throwing away all that fiber, all that pulp, and they're just concentrating the sugar. And then they put it into cookies and things like that. And that's a sort of a chemical cocktail that our brains never dealt with throughout evolution. It becomes addicting.
It's sugar crack. That's what it is. I mean,
Sure is, exactly.
If we just had to gnaw on a piece of sugar cane, we'd never do it for more than a couple of minutes.
That's right.
Dr. Neal Barnard, the president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, and an adjunct faculty member at the George Washington University School of Medicine. His new book, The Power Foods Diet, the breakthrough plan that traps, tames, and burns calories for easy and permanent weight loss. I've been following Neal for years. His books have been helpful to fight all sorts of diseases, heart disease, diabetes, but this is one that's for general dieting and is an eye-opener. The Power Foods Diet. I've read through it. I even instinctively just eat power foods. I love blueberries. Check it out. Neal Barnard, the author of The Power Foods Diet. That's our show for today. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to send a link of the show to your friends. Tell them you like the PETA Podcast. Contact us at PETA.org. You can find me at Twitter at emilamok. That's EMILAMOK. Or see my vlog at amok.com. Or see my work at ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. That's ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog. And get this podcast on YouTube at emilamok1. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe to as well as rate and review the show. It helps get the word out about the issues you care about. Our music is provided by CarbonWorks. Check them out on YouTube. Incidentally, that's Neal on lead guitar. And join us again next time. For real, that is. For next time, join us for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.